If you like baseball books, there was an old commercial years back that said, well, if you like peanut butter, you'll love Skippy. And this is a baseball book here. If you're a baseball fan, if you're a Braves fan, you're really going to love it. Even if you're not a Braves fan, you follow baseball, you're going to love it. Maybe a little less, but it's still a terrific book nonetheless. It is called When the Braves Ruled the Diamond, 14 Flags Over Atlanta. The author is with us tonight, Dan Schlossberg, and author of 39, count them, 39 baseball books. And Dan, it's such a pleasure and so nice to meet you, and thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be on your show.
Well, thank you. And what I was reading your book, 1957. You go back to the days of Hurricane Hazel, for crying out loud.
I do. Very few people remember him, but I remember him vividly. The guy hit 403 and was never heard from again.
Like a hurricane, he came and he went.
That was about it.
And you, did you always want to be a sports writer?
I did. Actually, when I went to college at Syracuse, I wanted to be a political journalist and cover the White House. But I really enjoyed covering the college baseball team up there when they had a baseball team, and they don't anymore. But I worked up for the Daily Orange, covering the Syracuse baseball team, had a great time, and really discovered how much I enjoyed writing about baseball. And so after I graduated, I was offered a job as the AP sports editor in New Jersey, and I took it, and I was off and running.
And that's terrific. You know, years back, and I still keep in touch with him from time to time, and I have to have him on Robert Lipsyte, formerly of the New York Times, where he thought he was going to be a great, serious journalist, and one night they sent him out to cover, they actually sent him to cover the 62 Mets, and then another assignment nobody wanted when Cassius Clay was going to get killed by Sonny Liston in Miami. It's like, it's just funny where it goes, but that's a great story. This particular book, now obviously you're a Braves fan, you love the Braves. What was the inspiration particularly for it?
Well, the whole point here was nobody's ever written about the 14-year title streak, which is a professional sports record. And to me, it's the team equivalent of Cal Ripken's consecutive games playing streak. Excellence over 162 games for 14 years in a row. That's unbelievable. It's
100 games, 6 times, 5 pennants, 2 MVPs, 4 Hall of Famers when Jones is admitted, 1 World Series. Does this dynasty, obviously you might have a little bias, but does this outstrip the 49-64 Yankees in your estimation?
It does, because there were no playoffs then. That makes a world of difference.
Yeah.
Take all those playoffs away, and if the Braves win and go straight to the World Series, they'd have a whole bunch of World Championships.
It's really something, and I guess, like anything else, you begin at the beginning, and I remember, and this is going back a number of years, and one of the sports channels was chronicling the San Francisco 49ers, and in order to build a team, they hired Harry Edwards, I guess from the University of California, the eminent sociologist, and he developed like a sort of a matrix. He said these are the players who were the best players on this team. He noticed a lot of common factors in them. And oftentimes the 49ers would turn down players that were very good because they didn't have the same integrity, work ethic, and things like that. The Braves, at least, from one sitting here, in the Northeast, had this great chemistry where everything seemed to fit. Was there a great scientific effort in getting people cut from the same cloth, or did all of this just kind of fit real well?
There was definitely a concerted effort to get guys who not only were talented on the field, but good guys in the clubhouse. When they ran into a few guys who weren't, like John Rocker and Brett Boone and Kenny Lofton and a few others, they got rid of them in a hurry.
Yeah, now that's for sure. I mean, it certainly was a no-nonsense environment. And when you think of those pitchers, Smoltz, Maddox, and Glavine, I mean, what was, in your estimation, what was their biggest common thread?
Golf. Those guys loved to play golf, and it was a good thing because while they were relaxed down the golf course, they traded trade secrets among each other, and that really helped them. Those 3 guys, by the way, are the only trio of teammates together for a decade or more to make the Hall of Fame. Pitching teammates.
That's absolutely unbelievable. Now, also brings us to a discussion of Leo Mazzoni. Now, today you have the pampered pitcher. He's getting close to 100 pitches, and he's going to hurt his arm. And what are we? And Leo had this thing, I guess, was get out there and throw the ball.
That's right. His theory was to throw twice between starts, which was kind of a radical theory. Johnny Sain was Leo's contemporary and actually his mentor. And Leo picked it up from Johnny Sain. Johnny Sain developed all those 20-game winners and had guys on four-man rotations. And Leo would have done the same thing. He loved the four-man rotation. And in fact, Don Sutton, as a current Braves broadcaster, told me the same thing. Better to throw often and to stay healthier that way. But baseball today doesn't work that way. In fact, some teams are even using 6 starters. So Leo definitely was onto something, and I personally think Leo ought to be in the Hall of Fame too.
It's really something, and I guess he's really kind of keeping a low profile these days.
He's a broadcaster in Atlanta. He'd like to get back into the game, but he says his theories are so radical.
Yeah.
He's so outspoken that no manager wants him on his staff.
That's terrible. I mean, the man only had a part in 14 division winners. I mean, it's
he was one of 3 guys who wore a Braves uniform throughout that streak. Bobby Cox was another one, and John Smoltz, and that's it.
It's really something. Now, behind this all, you had Ted Turner. Sort of like the anti-Steinbrenner, I guess. And what was his take on the ball club? I mean, there was that time, I guess it was in the late 1970s, where he put on a uniform and he managed, but I never got the impression that Ted was George, or was he George, or was he a lower-key George?
Ted was like a next answer to George, I guess, because he was pretty outspoken and radical and innovative, and he did manage for a day in 1977. He sent Dave Bristol on an alleged scouting trip, and Ted lost the one game he managed before Bowie June stepped in and said, you can't manage, you're the owner. But Ted did a lot of things. He brought in a lot of players, he signed a lot of free agents, and he finally started to win when he hired guys like John Schuerholz to be the general manager.
Yeah.
And he brought back Bobby Cox as a manager. And all of a sudden, the Braves really gelled when the baseball people started running the show.
Yeah, and that was George, would always defer to his baseball people when he felt like deferring, or so it seemed. But now Bobby Cox, to me, he seemed to be like the last of like the dyed-in-the-wool baseball men. Lived, died, slept, and ate baseball. Would go out and fight and kick dirt, and we don't see that anymore, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm with you. He was thrown out 158 times, which is a record for any Major League manager, back to Billy Martin and Earl Weaver and John McGraw. But Bobby Cox had the record. And when you talk to him as a member of the media, he's calm, he's relaxed.
Very nice man.
He's outspoken. Yeah. But he's great, a real personable guy. And you wonder how a guy like that gets thrown out so often. But he really took it very hard during the game.
And defended his players. And that's... it's just something. I remember watching I guess it was the 1999 playoffs with the Mets, and he was, really had to be about at least in the modern era, about the best baseball I had seen, and just the respect and the command he had for that club. It was really something to watch.
It's really true. When he retired, other teams paid tribute to him. In fact, in the 2010 postseason, after the San Francisco Giants beat the Braves in the playoffs, the Giants came out and saluted Bobby Cox and knew it was his last game.
Yeah, and that's really nice. And going back to 1999, now that was the first time. 1999, at least for me personally, was sort of a kind of a busy, rough year in many respects. So one time, down towards September, I had a chance to sit and watch a baseball game, and onto the mound comes this guy, John Rocker. And I'm watching this, and I called up my brother who did some scouting for San Francisco, and I said, Mike, I've never seen a man throw a ball this hard. This is unbelievable. And here's a guy with an amazing ability, but what happened when he got to the big club?
As John Schuerholz said, he had $1 million arm and a 10-cent head. The guy had all these ideas about different people, different religions, different colors, different persuasions, and instead of keeping quiet the way he should have, and just, especially as a celebrity, you don't spout off because the press is going to be right there. You're going to find your name in the papers, and you're going to run into trouble, and that's exactly what happened with John.
Yeah, it really was sad, and between he and Remlinger, they threw darts. It was absolutely unbelievable, and Again, that's why there's 14 flags over Atlanta. Out of all these things that happened over this 14-year period, what's your particular favorite moment?
Well, that's so hard to say. However, I do have an answer. You only find one box score in the book. It's 1992 NLCS Game 7, otherwise known as the Francisco Cabrera game. And if you remember the bottom of the ninth inning of that game, Pittsburgh was up 2-0. If they got out of that inning, they win the pennant. They didn't, because with 2 outs, Francisco Cabrera struck the bases-loaded single, scored 2 runs. The Braves won that game 3-2, and they went on to the World Series.
Yeah, I could see where that would be. And then in the mid-1990s, there's this fellow from Florida named Chipper who just, to me, the textbook definition of a baseball player who is really the perfect cutout for this club. Now, how actively was he scouted by the Braves?
Extremely actively. He was a little shortstop. I shouldn't say little because he was tall, but they didn't expect him to become a big home run hitter the way he did. But they also felt he was a little bit too big to play short, so they moved him over to third base when Terry Pendleton was fading away, and Chipper really stepped into that position and was the rock, the face of the franchise all that time. He really became to the Braves what Dale Murphy was in the 80s for the Braves.
Yeah, no doubt, and just a wonderful career. And, over everything that we saw, and with all of the things in baseball and all of the upheavals and the labor actions and the drug use, the alleged drug use and whatever, the Braves team seems so clean compared to all of that. And it couldn't have been an accident.
Well, the one exception to that probably was John Rocker, because he did admit
Otis Nixon too, yeah,
and other things, steroids. But other than Rocker, you're right, they kept clean, and because Bobby Cox had a very business-like clubhouse, no loud music, you had to wear earphones, having the 2 rules: show up on time and play hard. And his guys did that, and that's why they won so often. In that 14-year run, the Braves won 100 or more games 6 times. That's unbelievable.
It is. It really, truly is, and with the strength in the division. And the amazing thing, as far as Mike, my young producer who you spoke to, I said, Deion Sanders was a baseball player. He said to me, "Really?" I said, "Oh yeah, a darn decent baseball player." And were the Braves disappointed when he didn't keep up with baseball?
They were, because he wanted to play football too. And in fact, one year he tried to play football and postseason baseball at the same time.
I recall.
And that really, really didn't work. And his attitude was a question mark too, because remember when he dumped the Gatorade on Tim McCarver?
Yeah, I do.
I was actually standing right next to Tim McCarver, and I saw Deion coming. I got out of there quick.
Oh, yeah, I remember the tape of that. That was terrible. And I also remember him not running out the pop and being cursed out by Carlton Fisk at the Yankee game. "You have the Yankee uniform on, run."
Exactly. Yeah, some of these guys developed an attitude over time, but Deion was a phenomenal baseball player. The guy could run, he could hit for power, he could field. He was a great player, but didn't put his whole heart into baseball. He should have.
And I guess I have a very good friend who's died in the wool Florida State guy, and that tomahawk chop that came from FSU and the Seminoles, and when the fans came north, they brought it to the Braves.
Yeah, there's really one guy named Brady, and I can't remember his full name, but he actually brought a whole bunch of foam rubber tomahawks to New York and distributed them to the Braves fans behind home plate, and it really caught hold in New York and in Atlanta.
Yeah, I remember Jimmy Carter on TV. He and Rosalind, they were doing it. Man, it's absolutely unbelievable. And you've been a Braves fan, Dan, your whole life, and you've seen the ups and the downs and everything going forward. Now, out of all of, obviously, you have this wonderful team in the 90s, but going into the new millennium, but going from the days of Hurricane Hazel forward, maybe cutting off like 1991, what was your favorite generation of Braves teams?
That was kind of tough, Tony, because other than Phil Niekro and Dale Murphy and maybe Bob Horner for a few years, they were really the bad news Bears for a long Braves for a long, long time. They were good in '69, and they probably should have beaten the Mets that year, but they just didn't really pitch well in the playoff round against the Mets. And in moments like Hank Aaron and moments like Phil Niekro, and some guys got to the Hall of Fame. Dale Murphy hopefully will get to the Hall of Fame eventually. But in this 14-year run, Tony, you've got other Hall of Fame candidates. You've got Chipper Jones, who's certain to go in 2018. Probably Andrew Jones after that. Perhaps Fred McGriff and Gary Sheffield, John Schuerholz, Leo Mazzoni. There are an awful lot of guys you can make pretty good cases for.
You really couldn't. I mean, as far as the Hall of Fame, you talk about a discussion that will fill hours, at least for me. I'll get together with Bob Lazzari, our mutual friend, or just others, and we'll just, people who are in, you scratch your head and you wonder why. People who aren't in, and you wonder why they're not in. And we've recently, Bob more especially, there is this, I'm sure you're aware of it, a lot more, involved in baseball on a daily basis than I might be. But Lucius Doc Adams, who apparently was the author and architect of baseball when it was baseball, and his rules of baseball just sold for I don't know how many millions of dollars. And he really revolutionized the game of baseball, and trying to get him admitted and people to, how could I put it, recognize the fact that, yes, this is a functional and fundamental part of, you're explaining it to somebody in 2016, and what do they care? And I think that's part of the problem as time goes on. But yes, I would like to see these Braves get in.
Yeah, the Veterans Committee, there are some serious questions there. There were some guys last year I thought should have gotten in. Tony Oliva was on the ballot, Dick Allen was on the ballot, and they didn't make it. But a couple of years ago, when they picked Pat Gillick ahead of John Schuerholz, I was really upset, because John Schuerholz was the first GM to win world championships in both leagues. He should have gone in first. Now,
did Schuerholz and Cox have a good working relationship?
Oh, terrific. When Schuerholz came over from Kansas City, Cox was both the manager and the general manager. But he wanted to stay on the field, and he and John worked together beautifully. They were together 14 years. They must have done something right.
Yeah, and it certainly wasn't one of these George and Billy things. But that's I guess you're right. It absolutely goes without saying. And after this is a brand new book now. How has the reception been since you've had it out?
Very well. It's gone really well. It came out on March 22nd. I've done a lot of signings, a lot of interviews. I'm going to Turner Field. Going to sign books on June 11th in the Braves Museum. Going to sign at the Yogi Berra Museum on May 22nd.
Yeah.
Signed at a bunch of libraries already too. So, and a lot of interviews going on. So the book's done very well. By the way, Bobby Cox wrote the foreword. We should mention that.
Yes, and it's right here, and I have it. And Bobby Cox has some wonderful things to say. And I just think it's great, because you really walked into a period here of history that, knowing so much about it and following it, I was thumbing through it, and I was just so pleased. It's really a terrific work, and the detail that you have going down through the years and the players. And one of the things you hit on, you talk about a guy that had drug issues, probably could have been a whole lot better, was Otis Nixon, even though he had a very respectable career.
Yes, in 1991, he stole 72 bases by Labor Day, and then got suspended for cocaine abuse. Had he not been suspended, I believe the Braves would have swept the Minnesota Twins in that World Series.
It's absolutely amazing. And that's the great part, I think, about, when you think of sports and you watch something like that, or you consider it and you say, if only but that. And one day it dawned on me, I was kind of in the house by myself. My wife was visiting her family in Maine, and I was watching something that had taken place. And I said, Tony, no matter how often you watch that thing 25, 30 years ago or more, the outcome's not going to change. It's never ever going to change. And you can sit there and say, if only this, if only that. It's absolutely unbelievable.
That's what makes baseball great, Tony. There's so many things like that with any team. Doesn't matter what team you root for.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Now, while we have you in our remaining minutes, where do you think, as a writer and as a baseball professional, the whole business with steroids and people that have used steroids, Alex Rodriguez, Barry Bonds, perhaps Sammy Sosa. Where will these fellas get admitted, do you think, or is it going to be Roger Clemens? Is this going to be the abyss forever?
I think Sammy Sosa is not ever going to get admitted because he also is guilty of corking it back, you might remember.
I do.
So that's like 2 strikes against him. But some of the others, now that Mike Piazza has gotten in and Jeff Bagwell is almost certain to follow next year, those guys were suspected. Nothing was ever proven. Those guys were suspected. I think that that's going to make it easier for guys like Pudge Rodriguez and maybe Juan Gonzalez, and some of the other guys are going to become eligible in the next few years. And therefore, maybe Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens will get in one day. Not Rafael Palmeiro, who lied to Congress. But Barry Bonds is now a hitting coach with the Marlins. Very friendly, signing autographs, great with the media. He's changing his whole persona. And it's obvious he's campaigning as hard as Hillary Clinton is.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, the sad thing, Mike, my producer, had held up and he written to me on a big piece of paper, Mark McGuire. I understand his back is so bad he can't pick up a golf ball. That's what steroids have done to him?
Not surprised at all. He's also a lot thinner than he was. Those guys, when their heads got bigger, that was the giveaway. You cannot do anything physical to make your head get bigger. You can make any other part of your body muscular, but not your head. That's like a telltale sign. You look at Mark McGuire's rookie card or Barry Bonds' rookie card, and look at what they were in their peak in the early 2000s. What a difference.
It's, well, we wanted to see those home runs, and this is what they all did, and that was baseball in the 90s, and then we received what we received.
Now, by the way, it's interesting, you mentioned home runs. The Braves team record for home runs occurred during the 14-year streak. Andrew Jones, a guy who's overlooked all the time.
You're right.
51. He's the only Braves player ever to hit 50 or more home runs in a season.
And it's, and there's a guy, that's just versatile and long-time player. And I'm not going to say he's lost to history, but you don't think of him a lot.
Yeah, 10 straight gold gloves comparable to Willie Mays in center field. This guy really deserves a shot at the Hall of Fame.
You're right, and I'll tell you, we'll have you back some night, and I'm going to make a listing of all the players I think should be in the Hall of Fame, and all the players I think should be removed, and we'll probably take up the whole 2-hour show with it. But sadly to say, Dan, we're out of time. Again, the book, When the Braves Ruled the Diamond, 14 Flags Over Atlanta, by 39-book baseball author Dan Schlossberg. Dan, a pleasure, our best. Do keep in touch. Get to the Bear Museum. Say hi to Dave Kaplan. And have a great time. Have a great time in Atlanta. We'll talk soon.
Sure will, Tony. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir. Bye now.
Thanks.
An honor interviewing Dan Schlossberg. Anyway, we're going to be coming back with some retromercials, and then we're going to have some classic clips. And then we're going to have a bump, and it's going to get me out of here. So we'll be right back right after this.